Greetings all, my name is Selena Rosado, and welcome to this three-part video series going over the ins and outs of organ maintenance. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about me, some additional information is posted on the AGO Virtual POA website under the Presenters and Performers tab. The subject of organ maintenance can be, well, complicated, and my goal here is to hopefully demystify some of what goes on in the service work and maintenance side of organ building to you all. There's a saying that one can never truly master the art and science of organ building. And in some ways, this is very true. There's always more to learn in the grand scheme of the industry, and I'm still a relatively new technician. But hopefully I can share some tips that kind of helped me get to where I am today. The first video I'd like to refer to as the icebreaker. We've all had to deal with awkward icebreakers at one point or another, going into a new class, summer festival, camp, job, or just having to introduce ourselves, followed up by the inevitable, what's your favorite color, favorite animal, little known fact about you, etc. But why do this in the first place? In an attempt to get to know the people around you and ultimately build a relationship with them. In order to understand the specific area of organ maintenance, you have to get to know your instrument first. Let's look to our colleagues in the orchestral and band world. Most of these musicians know how to do basic repairs to their instrument. A string breaks while a violinist is playing, well, they know how to change out the broken string for a new one. Keyboard players are relatively unique in that most of us might not know a ton about what goes on behind the keys and/or the facade pipes. I also feel like having some sort of working knowledge in organ building can assist in becoming a more refined registrant, knowing exactly why certain pipes speak the way they do, and being able to use a certain instrument's construction to your artistic advantage. Now to the nitty-gritty. Keep in mind that this is just the beginning of a very, very complex field with a lot of information. So if you're overwhelmed, just starting out, a little bit of both, that's totally okay. This first video hopefully has some resources that can assist. Step 1, pull up some stop lists. The OHS, or Organ Historical Society, and yes, this is definitely a plug for the OHS because they're an awesome organization and you should totally join them, has an excellent resource called the Pipe Organ Database. You can go on here and select an instrument that you'd like to look up. You can search by builder, institution, city, etc. So let's do an example as it loads. Surf through the stop list and just familiarize yourself with the nomenclature. Some stop lists might include some technical specifications, either towards the bottom, maybe on the sides. Just go ahead and surf for it. So go ahead and surf through that as well. Focus on stuff that looks really unfamiliar, and as always, ask questions. You can ask your teacher, a local organist, your local organ technician, or local organ builder. Any and all should be willing to answer your questions. After getting acquainted with nomenclature, familiarize yourself with different pipe construction types. Eventually work towards a stop list and see if you can label the name with a general form of pipe construction, even though there is some variation. But again, get yourself acquainted with the variations that you may find in the field as well. I.e. a Borden, if you see that on a list, is usually a stopped wooden pipe, but sometimes they're capped metal, and you name it. This will be super important later on when discussing both preventative maintenance and diagnosing specific on-site problems such as dead notes and ciphers. Another important component of the icebreaker is to look up the major regional historical trends in organ building and the major builders that influence those time periods. Some of these examples, although this is most definitely not an exhaustive list, are listed below, but it's a good start. Why is this important? Well, a lot of times instruments or portions of instruments are built in a certain historical style. Having some familiarity with these styles can help you greatly if you're ever asked to be on an organ committee for a church or when discussing informed restoration or rebuild aspects with your technician. Your final step in the icebreaker phase is to get to know your instrument, specifically its basic mechanical design. Now there are several great resources for this, but One of my favorites when I was just starting out was this book by John Shannon called Understanding the Pipe Organ. You can get it on Amazon, there's a Kindle or an ebook version, or through other retailers. So, what kind of instrument do you play, and why is this important? Well, we've got several main categories. Obviously, there are variations of these categories, and this is most definitely not an extensive list, but it's enough of a start. First, you've got mechanical action organs, meaning that the key to pipe mechanism is mostly or entirely mechanical. Sometimes the stop action on these has electrical components, sometimes it's all mechanical as well.
So this is an example of a mechanical action organ. You'll see here that the key desk and pedal board are attached to where the pipes sit, as well as the winding mechanisms that provide the air to these pipes. And the cool thing about these instruments is that the control from key to pipe is, as its name states, mechanical. So basically when you press a key on these instruments, you're controlling a series of levers that ultimately connect to what's called a pallet. And when that pallet drops, it allows air to flow into a given and specific pipe. There are basically two channels that run on what you could kind of consider an XY axis. You have the note channels and you have the stop channels. And basically both the stop needs to be drawn and the note needs to be played in order for that specific pipe to speak. If you don't have both of those basically mechanisms, connected to each other, then only one of the two channels is going to fire and the pipe will not speak. So that's essentially the 101 of how these instruments work.
The other main category is electric action, and there are definitely different types of electric action. And again, this is not an extensive list by any means, but a good starting point. You've got ElectroPneumatic instruments, where a combination of some sort of electrical switching is combined with air-based movement to actuate the pipe mechanism, usually with leather pouches and valves. Another design is the all-electric chest, where the key to pipe mechanism concludes with a magnet that actuates a valve directly. You may have also heard the term direct electric, which is a term and design trademarked by the Wicks Organ Company of Highland, Illinois. A common misconception is that this makes them quote-unquote electronic organs, and this is not true. They are indeed pipe organs, as the sound is still produced by air driven through pipes, just with a specific kind of design. These are just some of the really broad categories, but the Shannon provides really good information on different and more specific wind chest design and how they relate to each instrument. And as always, if you're not sure or confused, well, ask questions. This stuff can be really confusing, so don't feel bad if it doesn't make sense right away. And I'll also emphasize that one style or particular brand or construction of instrument is not necessarily the best or better. They're just different, and each scenario just, has its own requirements, just depending on situation to situation. Some of you may not currently play on a pipe organ at all, and will play on what's called a digital organ. These can be by Allen, Rogers, Walker, just to name a few. Since these are a totally different animal, contact your local dealer/electronic organ technician for more information. The last get to know your instrument aspect that I should mention is getting to know what's called a chest layout or a wind chest layout. Shannon provides some excellent diagrams on some of these common layouts. Get to know these layouts in particular and learn how to find not only where the ranks are on a particular wind chest, normally the y-axis, but how the notes are laid out, normally the x-axis. This will allow you to locate a specific pipe quickly and effectively if needed. Side note, so if you really feel comfortable with the grasp of basic chest design and layout, check out Chapter 5 of the Shannon. There are excellent diagrams and explanations of different chest designs in bigger detail. For example, the electric slider chest, spring chest, ventral chest, Pitman chest, and the universal wind chest, which was designed by the Austin Organ Company out of Hartford, Connecticut. So this is just a sample introduction of how to get to know your instrument in general, and more specifically the instrument that you might play on a regular basis. In the next video, we'll detail some common problems and how to go about addressing them.